Hello everyone and welcome back to Newegg TV. My name is Paul. I'm here with JJ from ASUS, and today we're going to be talking about this new motherboard. This is the Z97WS or workstation board. So JJ, when it comes to a workstation board, well, what is the sort of point that ASUS comes from a design perspective? What is the most important things for a workstation board?
You know, it's actually really interesting because it's derived from a lot of the same tenets that we would have for just any of our motherboards, where, but it's just kind of further kind of improved upon. So of course, you know, for a workstation, as it's being first and foremost a system that's utilized for productivity purposes, whether it's going to be, you know, for content creation or any number of other different type of usage model, as it's primarily there for productivity as opposed there for maybe enjoyment purposes, you want that system to be as reliable and as kind of durable as possible. And this is actually kind of a precursor in a lot of ways then to what amended coming into our tough division of motherboards. But really our kind of design focus is to be able to enable the board with key design tenets. So one is going to, of course, be server-grade reliability and validation. And so that comes through a lot of extensive tests that we do on the board to be able to ensure that it meets a very high quality level. But that's kind of a given when you buy any ASUS board. So it's also going to come through also supporting specialist types of usage models that are really focused towards the SMB and the SOHO space. So SMB would be small business, SOHO would be small home office, as well as, you know, for prosumers. So it could be somebody that's maybe doing videography in their part-time, or maybe also even somebody that's more of an enthusiast user that wants kind of more prosumer professional class connectivity and feature set. But you know, we also find that interestingly enough, because of the feature set that we incorporate on WS boards, that they also speak to actually a large segment of our just kind of gamer enthusiast segmentation. So guys that want, you know, clean high-end boards that have a lot of expansion and a lot of flexibility. But you know, getting back to your original question, if we take a look at just kind of core tenets, it's reliability, stability, very high degree of interoperability and compatibility, as we want to be able to support more specialized types of devices, and we'll talk a bit more about that, as well as I'd say expansiveness in terms of the connectivity, whether it's going to be in PCIe storage or whether it's going to be in flexibility for different types of PCIe, or whether it's going to be in the storage or whether it's going to be the networking connectivity. We're going to look at really robust connectivity.
So the idea is if you have a workstation board and you're using a workstation, whether it's in an office at work or at home, it's something that you're probably using to make money with, or possibly even have a lot of your business relying on. So you want to make sure that that is going to work for you, be stable, but also have tons of interoperability with lots of other potential add-on things. So for instance, we have the full support for potential four-way configurations for graphics cards, but that also gives you tons of bandwidth, or at least additional PCI lanes, or as you were saying earlier, multiplex PCIe lanes, so that you can have more add-on cards. So if you're doing something like, say you're using Quadro cards or something like that, Tesla cards, you're going to have tons of support for that. But also integrated along with that is going to be a lot of the new goodness that comes along with the Z97 chipset. So you're going to have, for instance, native support for M.2. As well. So let's talk about, we've been talking about the mainstream series of Z97 boards from ASUS today, and separate videos if you guys want to check those out on our Newegg TV YouTube channel. What are some of the hallmarks from those boards that have carried over to the workstation board as well? So
first and foremost, just going to be inherent ASUS design. And when we talk about inherent ASUS design, things like the trace, the topology, the power regulation, all those things are kind of a given. So regardless, from a non-negotiable perspective, regardless of what you're going to do with this system, you can feel confident in its reliability, stability, compatibility, performance, and that also includes overclocking. While WS doesn't historically get maybe messaged as an overclocking capable board, it's outstanding in this respect. The actual power delivery implementation that we have actually on the WS board is better than that of even what we have on the Deluxe, and it's higher end than what we even have on the Maximus 6.0. So when you talk about power delivery and regulation technology that's built onto the board, it's actually the best that we're going to have right now for a Z97-based motherboard. So in that respect, you can feel supremely confident and even going to that degree of performance tuning on a board. But in terms of where we see a lot of design consistency, first and foremost, it's going to be in, I'd say, automatic technologies like our 5-way optimization. So we talked about 5-way optimization, which is an extension and an evolution to what we had with 4-way optimization. So this gave you the ability to have either automatic auto overclocking technologies, such as an auto tuning, which allowed us to go ahead and auto overclock the CPU based on the CPU's margin, the cooling, the power supply, the memory that was in the system, and giving you a solid and stable and reliable result that was also effectively managed in terms of the max voltage that was supplied to the CPU. For this generation, though, we've extended it further, and we're giving you now the flexibility to do temperature target overclocking. We're giving you frequency target overclocking. We've added in multi-threaded stress testing for the memory that simultaneously can occur. We're giving you the ability to customize the duration in between the overclocking increments. Just a whole new level of flexibility and control for automatic overclocking, which is extremely impressive. For the fan control functionality, this has always been a big focus for our mainstream series and continues to be very important for them, and we've evolved them with Fan Expert 3 class fan controls. For a workstation board, I think it's even more important because in many types of situations you're going to have very complex types of configurations, like you noted, maybe multiple GPUs, multiple add-in cards, complex RAID controller cards. You could have 5, 6, 7, 10, 12 hard drives. You could have complex storage arrays. So cooling is really important to be able to ensure the overall reliability of your system. So in this respect, as you see, we've got a ton of fan connectivity on the board, 6 fan headers, just like our Deluxe, and just like our Deluxe board or the Pro board, it features the Fan Expert 3 class controls. So that means that every single header here offers full manual control in the UEFI or the operating system, 3 or 4 pin, but in addition to being 3 or 4 pin based, for this generation, we give you the ability to output the control signal to either be DC or PWM. Okay. The big benefit that we have with that is we've got this cool right here, PWM fan splitter cable. So with this type of cable, you could connect this to one of the chassis fan headers and then go ahead and connect 2 or 3 more chassis fans and have them all receive the same exact control signal. So it gives you a huge amount of flexibility and control to be able to have a more complex cooling configuration, but that can also still be managed effectively and easily from either within the UEFI or from within the operating system. Now we still maintain, of course, the full automatic fan calibration that happens in the OS, where you can rename all the headers and do all kinds of good stuff. But for this generation, we even added fan calibration as well as graphical fan tuning all within the UEFI as well. So those are 2 things that are consistent as well as what you see on the mainstream series. Okay. And rounding that out for the 5-way optimization, we have our app tuning. And so app tuning is a pretty awesome feature, I think, especially for content creation users, because what it's going to allow them to do is whether they're doing audio editing, image editing, or video editing, they're going to be able to define their applications with specific frequency profiles that are best suited for that application so that they can get the maximum performance possible. So an example of this might be like if you're, let's say, doing like encoding with Handbrake or Premiere, those applications are actually more multi-threaded aware. So that means that you would want to overclock frequency if you're overclocking your system to be higher across all cores versus, let's say, if you went into Lightroom or you went into like an image editor. Many image editors are actually tend to be maybe single-threaded, sometimes 2-thread load balance, but they generally don't tend to recognize all the cores. So you usually actually want higher single thread frequencies. So your CPU may be able to do 4.8, 4.9 gigahertz on a single thread, but it can only do 46 on 4 threads, right? So in that situation, you could go in and you can define per each one of those applications a profile targeted to give you the best performance possible. And if you're using your system a little bit for play as well as for work, guess what? For, let's say, if you jump into Battlefield, you could also have Battlefield have an optimized profile as well for clock frequency, but also take advantage of things like our auto optimization for the network priority and for the audio preset. So you could have Battlefield 4 open up at 4.6 gigahertz, have the LAN automatically set to high priority to make sure you get low ping and low latency, and then also have the audio preset automatically set to game so you get the best in-game immersion for the sound experience. So overall, just in that part alone, you're seeing a huge amount of continuity, but a huge amount of feature set that we have within the board. But getting to a hardware level of the board, we've got a lot going actually on here. If we take a look here in the primary section of the board, we've got a very large finned heatsink assembly on the primary VRM components. And while it's not necessarily, I would say, the most stylized in terms of the aesthetic, the goal is on WS series boards to have the highest level of efficiency. So we go for a classic pin fin thermal heatsink assembly because it allows what most effectively will have heat pulled through from the VRM components out and be able to effectively be dissipated. Okay. Now, in terms of the components that we're using, we have some ultra high grade inductors, and you can see the inductors even have a special shape to them, and they're actually shaped almost like a heat sink, where you can see that they have ridges, and those ridges on the heat sinks actually allow for superior thermal dissipation. So if you go in there and you can actually see how they have small little indentations, they almost look like little ridges on the actual inductors.
Okay.
So these are the same ones that we actually used in the previous generation, but they're pretty much the best that you can get on the market in terms of thermal efficiency and power output capabilities. In addition to that, directly underneath that, we're using fully integrated MOSFET and driver international rectifier driver MOSFET solutions, which are extremely high performance, not only in their thermal efficiency, but in their voltage threshold. So overall, from a power delivery standpoint, whether you're running stock or overclocked, you're pretty much getting the best of the best when it comes to those components in terms of their efficiency and power output.
So JJ, it's interesting, you've mentioned overclocking several times with this, which isn't necessarily where my mind would go when it comes to a workstation board, but when you have an implementation like this, like you've said, with the all of the power delivery being very high-end, and also when you have the automatic tuning features that you get with 5-way optimization, to be able to overclock a system, even though you're working on a workstation platform, that's going to help with stuff like rendering times. Basically, it's going to improve your productivity. And if you're buying this to use in a business where you're trying to make money,
time is money.
Time is money. So anything you can do there to speed up that sort of thing is definitely going to be a big help. So it's nice to have sort of that crossover between the stability
and like then that's why, like I said, also those components are also going to give you outstanding long-term reliability and efficiency, even if you run the system stock. So you know, we purposely designed the system from the perspective of giving you an outstanding experience, whether you're going to be running stock, whether you're going to be running a non-K part or a K part, or whether maybe you're using even a Xeon, as of course our WS series are the only boards that we produce that have official Xeon support as well. So you're really getting the best of both features. But in that respect too, we also want to be able to extend the same type of kind of easy to use features that for users that are also looking for an improved experience but maybe don't want to use our advanced auto overclocking technologies like 5-way optimization. We're still going to offer things like our one-touch options, like our TPU and our EPU switches, as well as our new XMP switch.
Okay.
So with the TPU switch, they have two different stages where they can just go ahead and switch that button, switch that switch into the different mode of operation to either have multiplier-based overclocking or multiplier overclocking with BCLK overclocking. If they want to shoot from the perspective of power consumption as well as lower target temperatures but not sacrifice performance, they can flip on the EPU switch. And also for kind of users that are in the middle, where we see the users that might buy a CPU and run it at stock, but they buy higher DRAM divider memory, so XMP memory, and don't necessarily realize that it's actually overclock memory, but they're buying 2133, 2400 speed memory, which can actually be very advantageous for compression-based applications and definitely for content creation. Then you also now have an XMP switch that's on the board that allow you to go ahead and just flip that on and auto-enable XMP. So there's a lot of really great performance tuning items. Now, rounding out one thing on the power componentry that we did touch, we've also still made some further reinforcements to even elevate the quality of the board even further. So the capacitors we can see on the board, they have actually a really nice kind of dark tone to them, and they have a very premium look and feel. But more importantly, these capacitors are actually an industry first. Okay. These are the first capacitors on any motherboard to feature 12,000 hour operation life cycle. Okay. So we had already kind of led the industry with offering multiple boards that had 10K rated capacitors, which was already a big improvement over the fact that we were using on pretty much all ASUS boards 5,000 rated capacitors, where the industry tended to average about 2,000. Yeah. So our average boards were using 5K, and then our enthusiast boards like ROG and TUF were using 10K, and now for our WS series we're using 12,000 hour rated capacitors. So this is pretty impressive that you have that level of quality being incorporated on this type of workstation platform. In addition, these also maintain the same properties of our 10,000 hour rated capacitors, where you have extremely high temperature tolerance and extremely low temperature tolerance, and a very high performance of a certain performance metric called ESR, which in total helps to have you really have the best performing capacitors that are out there on the market. So when you talk about really long-term continuous operation, it's great to know that you have that type of component quality on there.
Awesome. So it's one of those things that you might not notice just by looking at it, but that's why I bring you in to talk about this. You're also kind of teasing me a little bit with the implementation of actually some of the power connectors on the board. What have you guys done that's special with these?
So if you actually look at these, you'll see that they're actually a bit easier to see. They're more pronounced. Okay. And you'll also notice that they don't actually look hollow. They look like a singular kind of line, versus where if you look at a traditional motherboard that doesn't have this new what we call ProCool power implementation, you're going to see that they're actually kind of hard to see, and that's because the actual metal composition is actually hollow. So what we've done here is we've done a lot of analysis to realize that WS systems are used very heavily, and they tend to have extended run times across the actual power delivery section of the board as a whole. And what people don't necessarily realize is that these connection points, so the 24-pin power, the CPU power, as well as the PCI Express supplemental power, when fully loaded, those actual connection points can heat up. Now, the hotter something runs, the lower the efficiency is of it. So what we wanted to do was not only lower the actual temperature for those connection points, but to improve the efficiency. So it goes hand in hand in the same way that we're improving thermal performance and efficiency with those high quality VRM components that we're selecting, as well as adding in things like that copper sintered heat pipe that we have as part of the VRM heatsink. So it's one of those kind of subtle design choices that we make, but helps just continue to elevate the quality of the board in terms of what we're doing.
Very nice. Now, I had a question when it comes to storage, because I know there's some new storage options here, as well as, of course, maintaining some, I'm not sure we can call serial ATA legacy yet, but maintaining a lot of the connectivity that we've come to know and love. So storage is definitely huge when it comes to workstation, especially if you're working with large file sizes, whether it's video editing or anything like that. So what sort of storage options are available for workstation users out there?
So we're centered in right now actually in the primary, I'd say, storage array, but I always like to count USB as also part of the storage array. So in total, we actually have 10 USB 3 ports on the board with 2 front USB 3 headers, and those, of course, support our USB 3 boost technology. But speaking in terms of serial ATA and storage array connectivity, we, of course, have the PCH ports that are provided native SATA 6G, but then directly below here, we have 2 SATA Express ports. So this is going to allow you the ability to connect 2 SATA Express drives, or if you're not using it for SATA Express, each one of these serves as 2 SATA 6G ports. So you have a total of 8 ports in total here of SATA 6G, or you have 4 SATA 6G ports with 2 SATA Express ports. Now, for you guys that are interested in SATA Express, we will be releasing an actual accessory that we call the Hyper Express, which will allow you to go ahead and create your own SATA Express drive, taking either M.2 or M-SATA-based SSDs, putting 2 inside this enclosure, and then connecting it to that to have ultra high-speed single drive performance.
So this kind of looks like an SSD, but actually you open this up, drop in a couple M.2 ports, and then you will use this connector here, which is a SATA Express cable, at least one specifically designed for this, and you simply plug in one end to the drive, and then it's going to set up a little hardware RAID in there.
Yeah, and that's seamless. The user doesn't even have to go about configure anything, so it's automatically done for them. All they need to do is physically connect the drive, and they're able to take advantage of that. So it's an awesome feature that we're going to just be releasing here to just be able to give you that immediate access, so that if you want a simplified, ultra high-speed single drive volume. So it's a pretty cool feature. But in addition to that, of course, there's also the popularity of new types of small form factor flash SSDs that are coming to the market in the form of M.2. So you can see down here we also have M.2 connectivity. Now this M.2 connection will support both M.2 SATA as well as M.2 native PCIe. So either one of the M.2 specifications that are on the market you'll be able to utilize. So in this respect, you pretty much get all the type of connections that you could possibly want. But expanding that further, if we go ahead and pull out and show you the PCIe connectivity, this is another big point on the WS series of boards. It's just the sheer number of PCI connections. Now, as you noted, this board, of course, features a multiplexing chip that gives you the ability to run, two-way, three-way, or four-way GPU configurations. But more importantly, you have actually a wide range of users that consider complex storage array configurations that may be based off of fiber channel controller cards, SAN-based cards, could also be based off of complex PCIe SSDs, as well as complex RAID controllers, where they're running out to either SATA or SAS configurations where they could have 4, 8, 12, 16, 24 drives connected. And this is a really important point to keep in mind because the WS boards have enhanced option ROM support. Some of these complex add-in cards that we've noted, as well as other devices like multi-channel gigabit Ethernet controllers and other devices, could literally cost hundreds of dollars to sometimes over $1,000 for these add-in cards. As a business professional or prosumer, you don't want to buy this card, plug it into a board, and not have it work. So we work really diligently to look at these type of add-in cards and be able to ensure that they work the way that they're intended to, so that you get the best performance possible, as well as the overall best interoperability. And so for you guys that are looking for more prosumer levels of connectivity, whether it's going to be in a PCI SSD, whether it's going to be in a RAID controller, or any of those other number types of devices, you have that flexibility available to you. And speaking about storage and kind of extending that out, if we go ahead and pull out here and take a look at our Thunderbolt EX2 card, this is another form of storage that really complements to the content creation community. Thunderbolt is the fastest external I/O standard that you have. It's a really impressive specification, and for this generation, you're starting to even see Thunderbolt-enabled multi-channel PCI Express enclosures, where you're able to go ahead and put in things like Rocket Red cards to be able to do acceleration for 2K and 4K content. Wow. You could be able to drop in PCIe SSDs, or you could have large multi-drive arrays going from 4 to 8 to 12 to 24 hard drive arrays that you can plug in through Thunderbolt and get ultra-high performance. For people that are in a complex work environment that also need the flexibility to run long distances, with the new advent of now optical Thunderbolt cables that allow you to run literally, over 25 to 30 meters in cable length. You could imagine having your entire storage array in another part of your station where you have your actual system set up, giving you an unmatched level of flexibility, keeping in mind that that other system could also have another daisy chain of either another storage device or even your display monitor. So you can see the level of the kind of connectivity and flexibility that this board is giving you that is really impressive and really just interesting in terms of being able to give you different types of ways on how you set up your system. And rounding out that connectivity, the board also, of course, maintains a classic kind of connection standard that we have on our WS series. If we take a look here at the back I/O, and where we have dual NICs. So of course we maintain Intel because Intel is really the industry standard when it comes to the performance and the throughput, as well as the management. The management is something that's really important. Not a lot of people realize that the Intel Pro set gives you unmatched flexibility to be able to define characteristics like RSS, MSI-X. These are certain properties that when you can manage the performance for the controller, you can get significantly better performance in local network environments than you can through any other type of network controller, and it's really only made available in an Intel NIC. For this generation, we not only maintain the standard NIC that is part of the chipset, but we also have a true server-grade network controller. So for users that are looking to run a server OS, they're going to have official support from that network controller as well. So rounding it out, not only do you get, of course, that a great Intel Gigabit Ethernet controller setup, you get the USB 3 on the back I/O that also gives you, like I said, USB 3 boost and USB Charger Plus. We even give you eSATA support as well. So for users that are breaking out to external eSATA enclosures, you're pretty much not left with just about any type of connection that you could want on this board. It's very robust in this regard. But I know that you had some questions for me as far as some of this back I/O feature set, and we can see.
I did. So JJ was asking me what he thinks what I think this button does here, and I thought it made you a taco, which I think is pretty reasonable, and that should be something that's integrated into motherboards. But what you've left me in suspense for too long, JJ. What does that button do? So
one of the things that we notice in workstation systems is that users are looking for information on how their system is working and how it's responding. So this is a new feature we developed called QLogger. Okay. What this will give you the ability to do is that you can actually dump your entire post routine to a USB flash drive, so you can see in string format if your system is having any type of issues where it's not responding or it's not booting up correctly, as opposed to having to try to look at a debug LED and try to figure that out, or looking at our QLED system where we have a light for the CPU, for the memory, for the graphics, or for the boot device. You can just plug in your flash drive, dump that out, and see an entire set of information on how your system is actually posting.
So is this primarily for troubleshooting if you're having issues getting the system up and running, or is there an application where this could help, like optimizing a system or something like that?
It would be predominantly for users that are having issues with their system in terms of getting it up and running. So classic examples of that could be either from internal component failure, where maybe a certain component is stopping the system from powering on, such as memory, or if that's the case, you could attempt to use our onboard MemOK button, which would help to troubleshoot memory-related issues. Or, of course, it could be from just a surge, spike, or sag, maybe resetting different types of UEFI settings, things along those lines.
But I imagine if you have just set up a new system like this workstation, you've really decked it out with add-on cards and storage arrays and that sort of thing, having that available to assess where a problem might be happening would really save you a lot of time when it comes to troubleshooting.
Correct. Now, to round out, one of the last features that goes along with that is also going to be a really cool function that we have called Dr. Power. So we have a special hardware function that allows us to actually monitor power load on the system. So as you can imagine, this type of system, when you populate a huge amount of hardware on here, your power, actually, you may use more than maybe your power supply can readily allow for, and this can cause premature failure or instability. So in this situation, you can actually receive an alert in the operating system to let you know, hey, you're near or close to the power limit, so you may either want to close some of the active applications to reduce your power load, or prepare yourself for actually that this might occur.
Okay.
Now, of course, most users won't run into this, but this is an advanced feature that we're giving that once again aligns with this type of more professional usage.
Excellent. So tons of different options there for adding on as much hardware as you want to in a workstation system, as well as obviously the debugging features that we've just talked about, and getting everything up and running for the first time. Next generation storage, obviously, and of course this is going to be compatible with existing 4th generation Haswell processors, as well as the upcoming Haswell refresh 4th generation core processors, I should say, from Intel, as well as of course the Xeon support that you get right out of the box with the Workstation series board.
Yep, so you pretty much get everything you could want in a workstation platform, and we've even done a partial upgrade to the audio, giving you an op-amp along with improved DTS audio sequencing, so you are good to go.
Perfect. So that is a rundown of the Z97 WS or Workstation board from ASUS. JJ, thanks again for stopping by today.
Thank you.
And thanks to you guys for watching. Don't forget to leave us a comment in the comment section below and let us know what do you think is the best configuration for this board. What would you build if you're building a workstation? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.